Kyle Harrison is going to get the opportunity to step in for the injured Justin Verlander, and no big deal. How he performs is only possibly going to influence the future of this team for the next half decade or so.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily San Francisco Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Giants, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. My name is Ben Kaspick, and on the show we provide daily episodes Monday through Friday, talking about the San Francisco Giants in a way that's data-driven and rational, but also simple, passionate, and accessible to all. I'm a former contributor for the baseball statistics and analysis websites Beyond the Box Score and Rotographs. I've been podcasting about the Giants since 2015, hosting this show for over 6 years, and I'm a lifelong Giants fan. Thank you for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, so check us out there if you have not already, and please hit that subscribe button wherever it is that you're following the show. And coming up on today's show, Kyle Harrison stepping into Justin Verlander's spot officially, and the short and long-term implications. We're also going to get to some mailbag questions, including how do the Giants address their issues against left-handed starters? By the way, they're facing a really good one tonight. And how much longer are they going to let LaMonte Jr. struggle at first base? Also, a final record prediction for the Giants at the 50-game mark. We're going to give our prediction. Is it updated or is it the same? We'll see. Anyway, getting to the news of the hour, Justin Verlander officially placed on the injured list. By the way, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So Justin Verlander goes on the injured list. Giants, as I surmised, I said that my guess was that Kyle Harrison would step in. Giants announced that he would. And then I also guessed that Tristan Beck or Sean Jelly would be added to the roster. And in fact, it is Tristan Beck. And the reason that move happens is because when Verlander goes on the IL, it creates an opening on the Major League roster. Harrison was already on the roster, so they didn't have to add him. Therefore, you got to call up a pitcher, and Tristan Beck gets the call. But the big news is that it's going to be Kyle Harrison. We thought it could be Carson Whisenhunt as a possibility. It could have been Jordan Hicks going just simply back into the rotation. That would have been the more boring and less long-term meaningful move, in my opinion. And I think they ultimately do the right thing here and give the opportunity to Kyle Harrison. And so Kyle Harrison had never in his professional career made anything other than a start in his professional career dating back to 2021, since being drafted in 2020 by the Giants. And I'm sure even in high school, he probably wasn't ever coming out of the bullpen. Well, who knows? But anyway, he's got 4 appearances this year, and they're all out of the bullpen. But prior to that, he had made 6 starts in Sacramento for the AAA Sacramento Rivercats, and he was doing extremely well. He had struck out a third of batters he faced exactly, and actually he's maintained that, and he struck out exactly a third of batters faced here in the major leagues, and his walk rate was down at just 7%, which is below average, meaning better than average. His ERA was 3.46. His fielding independent pitching was 3.00. So sparkling numbers for the young lefty. And these were in starts. It wasn't okay, they moved him to the bullpen and then he was dominating there. No, this was as a starter. The last time he was in AAA, his walk rate was 16.3% in 2023. And in the major leagues, he really brought that down. And then this year, it was only 7%. So he has cut it in half and then some. And so that's key for him. And so is velocity. And so far, what we've seen out of Harrison this year, I know they saw it at the minor league level. I didn't watch all of his starts at the minor league level, but at the major league level, he is averaging 95.8 with his fastball. Actually, we do have it. He averaged just 93.7 in AAA with his fastball, but it ticked up in the last couple starts, and that was when they made the decision to add him to the major league roster. And so he missed some time in spring training. I believe he was sick. And the big news is that last year his average fastball velocity over the course of a season, so it could have seen dips and valleys too, but it was just 92.5. And for Harrison to be successful, I think if he's throwing 96 on average, which he is right now, then that just plays way different than 92, 93. So it'll be interesting to see when he starts. We know Verlander, it's a 15-day IL for pitchers, whereas position players, it's a 10-day IL. And so Verlander's going to miss 2 starts, and the Giants believe he's only going to miss 2 starts. But when I said how Harrison performs, oh, no big deal, only affects not only the present, but the future of this team for the next half decade or so, I really mean that because, yes, opportunities always come up throughout the course of a season for certain players who are deserving, like Kyle Harrison, like Hayden Birdsong. We're already seeing those guys get their shots. But for Verlander to only need to miss 2 starts, and Robbie Ray pitching the way he's pitching, Logan Webb being the horse that he is, and Landon Roop kind of coming around and getting better results, at least in his last outing. He pitches again today, so we'll see how that goes. And then Birdsong in the rotation, you don't know for sure when the next opportunity is going to be. And so if Kyle Harrison pitches well in these 2 starts, if he looks dynamite, that could legitimately trigger the Giants to do something to make sure that he gets more chances. And I don't know what exactly that would be, because if it's Logan Webb and Robbie Ray and then Hayden Birdsong and Kyle Harrison and Landon Roop, there's no room for Justin Verlander. But yet I've said repeatedly, I don't think there's any way they would move Justin Verlander to the bullpen. He also has a full no trade clause, and so it could create some really interesting decisions for the Giants. But if you've got a young 23-year-old featuring electric stuff and potentially getting good results, then that's going to make you think. And then we'll continue to see how Landon Roop and Hayden Birdsong do. I think, I've made this point before. I don't believe they want to just make Landon Roop throw 150 to 200 innings. It takes going deep into games to get to 200 innings, but you could always give Landon Roop a breather and you do it that way, So that's probably the most logical thing that would happen if they want Kyle Harrison to make starts, is that a young player struggles, or just they don't want to overtax them, and so they move them back to the bullpen and then just kind of share the load a little bit. And when they're not starting, move some young player to the bullpen instead. And that was the case for Birdsong early on. He didn't pile up a ton of innings because he was coming out of the bullpen. So anyway, I just think, it's exciting, especially because the increased velocity has been very evident, and he's also featuring really good command right now. Kyle Harrison he's just been kind of pounding the strike zone, even though the walk rate is a little bit high. I said this the other day. He's walked 3 batters, and really 4, but one of them was intentional, and that gets counted for some reason in your walk rate. I don't know why intentional walk should count, but it's an exciting rotation with Webb and Ray and Birdsong and Roop and Harrison. There's just so much young talent there, And I'm really excited to see 2 Kyle Harrison start. So coming up in just a minute, we will turn our attention, also excited by the way, to see Tristan Beck, who's thrown the ball really well in AAA. But we'll turn our attention to some mailbag questions, including what are the Giants going to do about their struggles against left-handed starters? Well, they've got to face one tonight, and a good one, so we'll discuss in just a minute. And before we do, today's episode of Locked On Giants is brought to you in part by FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game, before tip-off and live. With player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. The opportunity to win $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet hits is just something that adds a ton of excitement to the game. And so I can't encourage this enough because, you know, the games are fun as it is, but then you add that kind of excitement. It's just an exhilarating ride. So are you new to FanDuel? It's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, here we go. We are going to get into some mailbag questions. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Everydayers. On Monday, we will be breaking down the Giants series in Washington, D.C. that gets underway tonight with Mackenzie Gore, left-handed pitcher who's having like a breakout season. Thankfully not with the Padres. You know, that's one thing. That's one good thing about this whole situation. A lot of the players that were sent over in the Juan Soto trade are now doing well for the Nationals, but the unhappy part of that equation is that you've got to face one of those guys tonight in Mackenzie Gore, who's having truly a breakout season with a strikeout rate of 35.6%. So we'll be breaking down this series on Monday. So relevantly, the first question is from JT, who says, what is the solution to the lineup's struggles versus left-handed starters? And as I explored the other day, it turns out it's not just left-handed starters. To start the year, it kind of was. They didn't have these like massive splits when it came to facing lefties in general, meaning including relievers, versus facing righties in general. But now they do. Like, they have been decent against righties, but like worse than that against lefties. And so it's kind of like, what is the solution for the team in general against left-handed pitching? So we're going to look again at the numbers against left-handed pitching. And so the Giants they're 18th in weighted runs created plus, which is not terrible. You know, obviously the middle is 15th, and that middle team has a weighted runs created plus of 86. So the median team has been 14% below average against left-handed pitching. And that, you know, below the league average offense. I'm saying league average offense. The middle team in baseball is about 14% below the league average offense when they're facing a lefty. And the Giants are just a little worse than that. But yeah, 220 average, 288 on base, 361 slugging. So let's look at the individual players and see if we can pinpoint some potential areas for improvement. Jung-Hoo Lee has done well as a lefty, left on left. So that's a bright spot right off the bat. Matt Chapman, the numbers are good, but hasn't hit for much power yet against lefties. So I would expect him to eventually do that. He does have a .423 on base percentage against lefties and a strikeout rate of just 15.4%. Tyler Fitzgerald has done his damage against lefties. Elliot Ramos has done well against lefties. Even Sam Huff has overall good numbers against lefties. Wilmer Flores, I mean, this is one area where you would expect him to be better than roughly league average offensively against left-handed pitching. And so if he can just do what he normally does, which is I want to say like 15 to 20 somewhere percent above average when he's facing a lefty, that'll help. So that's not that major of a difference between what he's done and what I'm saying I expect moving forward, but it is something. So Yaz has been a little bit below average against lefties. When I say a little bit, like 23% below average offense, 216 average, 275 on base, 351 slugging. He's in the lineup tonight, so that's a good example of maybe like how you're not going to fix the problems is that you're kind of forced, I don't want to say forced, to have Yastrzemski in there. They're not forced because that I'm guessing that means, Luis Matos is not in the lineup. So that's one of the things I wanted to point out is that these guys who are in there to hit left-handed pitching, Luis Matos and Casey Schmidt, they just haven't done it overall. I mean, it's not a huge sample at all. Casey Schmidt missed a lot of time. He only has 23 plate appearances against lefties, but in those 23 plate appearances, he hasn't hit. He's hit 190 with a 261 on base and a 286 slugging. It's 43% below average offense. And Luis Matos has a zero weighted runs created plus, meaning 100% worse than average when he's facing a lefty so far this year. 0.83 average, 108 on base, 278 slugging. So that's actually a pretty good isolated power. When he's had his hits, they've been for damage, but he just, 0.83 average. He just hasn't had many hits there against lefties. And I think the guy who maybe stands out the most is Willy Adames. So I have explained this. This may be the third or fourth time I've mentioned this since they signed him, but Willy Adames is one of the few players I've ever come across who has like true reverse platoon splits. Meaning, because he's right-handed, we generally expect right-handed batters to do better against left-handed pitchers. And I'm talking like not just batting average, but overall all-encompassing offense, which doesn't mean just batting average, home runs, and RBIs either. It means, you want to take OPS, that's a really kind of watered down, but yet much better than just batting average look at it. But his OPS will be much worse against lefties than against righties over the span of his entire career. And it's been a pretty long career. It's not a small sample at all. I'm not just talking about this year. I'm talking about his entire career. And it's a pretty dramatic difference, like 17% above average against right-handed pitchers and like 15% below average against left-handed pitchers. So like a 30-point swing in the opposite direction that you'd expect. And so that's like not a problem in and of itself, but it's actually kind of better. You'd rather he do better against righties because there are more righties. But the fact is that this season, Adames has done nothing against left-handed pitching at all. He's hit 138. He has a 203 on base and a 155 slugging. The fact that the average and the slugging are nearly identical, I would venture to guess he has one extra base hit and that it's a double against a lefty, like one extra base hit. And I'm going to just verify that for fun. Yeah, 8 hits, 7 singles, 1 double. So Willy Adames being nothing but a singles machine, and not even a singles machine because he's not getting a lot of singles. Like, he's not getting on base a lot at all, either via the walk or hits against lefties. It's like, yeah, we can live with you being whatever, 15% below average against lefties. But as it is now, Willy Adames has been he's been almost 100% below average, 96% below average offense. Like I said, 138 average, 203 on base, 155 slugging. Those are like pitcher numbers, pitcher hitting numbers. 31% strikeout rate, It's just bad, folks. And the good news is I wouldn't expect that to continue. I'd expect, quote unquote, regression to the mean, even though it'd be, in his case, positive regression, like he would get better and get to more of his career numbers against lefties versus this. I'm curious to see how he's done against righties, given that these are so bad. Like, I'm guessing that he's actually been pretty solid. Yeah, he has. He's been his normal self against righties in that I said 17% above average. He's been 16% above average this year against righties with just a 23.6% strikeout rate, 246 average, 331 on base, 435 slugging. So normal Willy Adames against righties. It's been the lefties, which is odd. And so that's kind of my key, is that you need Casey Schmidt or Matos. Matos not in there tonight to do what they're on the roster to do. And Schmidt, it's just a small sample, and I think his at-bats have been pretty good. But you need Willy Adames to not be so bad against lefties, which in his career he's been worse against lefties than righties, which is weird, but not like this. So that's the key. And Wilmer Flores, who's oddly, he's not a guy with major platoon splits in his career, but he's done most of his damage against righties as opposed to lefties. And you'd probably expect that to even out or reverse even over the course of the year. The tough news is you're facing Mackenzie Gore, who has, like I said, nearly a 36% strikeout rate tonight. So not the easiest guy to turn things around against. And you've got Landon Roop going. So this is a important game one where you're probably potentially the underdog, even though the Nationals are a below 500 team, because of the pitching matchup and facing Mackenzie Gore. And it's a lefty, and you've struggled big time against left-handed starters record-wise this year. So anyway, that was the long-winded way of answering that question, but I think it was important conversation and pretty thorough. So coming up in just a minute, we will get to how much longer can they deal with LaMonte Jr. struggling big time at the plate, and trade deadline needs, and also a final record prediction. We'll get to it in just a minute, and before we do, all right, here we go. We are going to get to some more mailbag questions. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Everydayers on Monday, we'll be breaking down this 3-game series against the Nationals. Giants will have Landon Roop going tonight against Mackenzie Gore. And gosh, they changed the MLB homepage. Normally I can just flip through and see the pitching matchups for the series, but can't do that anymore. It was too convenient. They wanted to not have it be convenient, so that's no longer the case, I guess. But I don't know. Logan Webb just pitched, so I'm guessing I don't know who's pitching for the Nationals in this series. Normally they let us see. Now I don't know. But we do know Mackenzie Gore is going tonight, and then we'll see after that. But we'll be breaking it down on Monday. The next round of questions are all about LaMonte Jr. Drew says, how much longer are they going to play Wade at first? Daniel says, how much more time should Wade be given before the Giants look for options elsewhere at first base? And then first name bunch of numbers says, first base and backup catcher. Can we please get anyone else besides the instant outs we currently have? All right. So these are worded slightly differently. How much longer are they going to play him at first? How much longer should Wade be given? So one thing to point out is that he's actually quietly been better lately, right? LaMonte Jr. So I'm going to look to verify that what I'm saying is true. Yeah, his kind of rolling 15-game numbers, he's actually been above average in his last 15 games. And yeah, if we look back to May 13th, he's been almost 100% above average. That's 22 plate appearance sample, but a walk rate of 22.7%, batting average of 353, on base of 500. He's been on base 50% of the time in those 11 plate appearances, 6 hits and 5 walks. and a slugging of .529. And so let's just look at the month of May just as without cherry picking. He's been league average offensively, .255, batting average, .340 on base, and .362 slugging. So it is worth noting that he has kind of turned things around as of late. However, your point is well taken. Like, if he just doesn't do this more consistently, I don't know, as long as the team is winning for the most part and staying in a strong position, I think they can afford to be somewhat patient. But also, this is now a team run by Buster Posey, so there's a couple of different things at play here. Number one, there's perhaps more loyalty and less ruthlessness, but at the same time, Farhan Zaidi was loyal to Wade and certain other players as well, and also understood that players can slump for a while and that eventually they usually get to their numbers. And I would expect that with Wade. But the other thing about Buster Posey is we don't know how aggressive he figures to be with the trade deadline in general, but also or just like trades in general, and also the timing of trades, because you do see in pretty much every year, like certain teams, they'll go out and be aggressive early. If they sense an area where they need to improve, if they sense that there's an area they need to improve, they'll go and get a guy. And so we just don't know. We have nothing to go by when it comes to Buster Posey's track record. I would guess, because of the first thing I mentioned, loyalty, but also the track record of Wade. It'd be one thing if they were just playing a young player who was just not getting it done and there was not much reason to believe they would, then it might be different. But with Wade, he's done it before. He's done it pretty consistently. He's not like going to win you an MVP or even get a single vote probably ever in his career, almost certainly. But at the same time, he's been a useful player his whole Giants career. It's just been a struggle this year in the first 44 games for him, his first 44 games, the team's first 50. So, yeah, I think if you're looking at trade deadline needs, and a lot of the questions were asking for trade deadline targets, and it's a little early to look at that. It kind of depends on what teams are out of the race come July, and we're only in May still. So I'm not quite ready to do that. It's also very labor intensive. I've got to scour every team's roster and all their different players and contract situations. So at the same time though, okay, one of the factors is you have your top prospect is Bryce Eldridge, who is a first baseman. And so you don't want to end up like I saw somewhere. There was, I think, an article about should the Giants trade for Matt Olson of the Braves. First of all, I don't see the Braves wanting to trade Matt Olson. And secondly, I don't see the Giants wanting to block Bryce Eldridge. Now, of course, there is the DH position. There's also Gerard Encarnacion. What is he eligible to come off the injured list today? He may be. I thought it was today. And the fact that they're facing a lefty, I'm slightly surprised that they didn't do that. It may be that he's eligible tomorrow, but that's another thing that they could do is just, if Wade continues to struggle, just give those plate appearances to Encarnacion. But then suddenly against righties, you'd have two righties in there at first and DH when you would really prefer to have at least one of those guys be a lefty. It would be Wilmer and Encarnacion. So I don't know. I think you'd have to look for a short-term solution at first. Nathaniel Lowe, who's on the Nationals, actually there was a MLB Trade Rumors report that I saw that Nathaniel Lowe is drawing trade interest. Given that he's not a free agent, or that he still has 2 years of team control remaining, it's not the ideal fit to me. And he's also not had a great season. So I don't know, someone on a short-term deal, like on an expiring contract, who plays first if Wade continues to struggle would make the most sense. It would take pressure off of them being forced to play their Bryce Eldridge card before they want to. And it would also potentially upgrade them at their weakest spot right now. But I think the move to make is the hold game for now. I think if they're still contending and Wade is still struggling, even in 2 weeks, that it's time to start thinking about that. But as he's trending up and given his track record, I think they will, and I think they should just probably continue to roll with what they have. And Encarnacion is coming back, and just see how he fits in. And if he starts hitting, it gives you another option to play him over Wade if it comes to that. So anyway, and then the backup catcher question. Yeah, I mean, it's not been great for Sam Huff, but it's also not the most important role, especially because your regular catcher, while he's not hitting at all, is so good defensively that he should play as much as possible. And not a lot of teams have great backup catchers. So I don't know. Could they make a move there? Sure. But they also have Max Stassi in the minor leagues, and he could be the guy that they go to replace Sam Huff. I mean, you're never going to see a blockbuster trade for a backup catcher, and there's a reason guys are backup catchers. It's because they have flaws to their game. And obviously we've seen that with Sam Huff, but he also can do something. He's a power threat at least. And certain guys like throwing to him, like Robbie Ray, who's caught most of Robbie Ray's starts, I do believe. Anyway, the last question comes from Steve, who says, final record prediction. Do you think we make the wild card with how the season has been going? So the playoff odds, according to FanGraphs, have the Giants with the second best odds in the division. The Padres have been on a major losing streak right now. The Diamondbacks are just 2 games over 500. So FanGraphs says 51.5% odds the Giants make the playoffs. This other projection system called THEBATX has the Giants at 65% odds to make the playoffs. That projection system has them at 87.8 wins, and that's the median projection out of like 10,000 or more simulations. And the FanGraphs median projection is 86.5, meaning, 86, 87. And I said before the season, 87, 88 was I said 88, 87. I hedged downwards. But I'll continue to roll with 88. They're playing at a pace that's above that right now. 29 wins out of 50 games times 162 is a pace of 93.96. So about 94 win pace. So 88, I'm hedging against them a little bit, but I mean, 94 would be nice. You'd almost certainly make the playoffs if you got 94. Could even possibly contend for the division. Did I say 84? 94. But I don't know. Do I think they make it? I'm going to say yes. Why not? I think they've been consistent enough, and the young pitching is intriguing enough, and the vibes are good enough that I like the way things are looking. Plus, I think Buster Posey may do what he needs to do, whereas Farhan Zaidi was a lot hesitant at trade deadlines, whereas Posey may be more aggressive. And they've got some pieces to trade, some young players who figure to be out of options going into next year, perhaps like a Marco Luciano. Anyway, that is all the time we have for today. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the all-new Locked On MLB Game Night. Every game, every night, all season long. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find MLB Game Night on Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Once again, I'm Ben Kaspick. Check me out on Twitter or X at Ben Kaspick, Kaspick. If you like this show, please consider rating it or leaving a review. It helps me out a lot, so thank you in advance, and thanks to everyone who's done so already. Can't wait to be with you again on Monday. Have a great weekend. Thanks again for listening. You are now Locked on Giants.